So, have you been to Painswick before?
No.
You have?
No.
No. Okay, for those of you who haven't, I'll just kind of briefly explain how we're able to stand in this landscape today. And really our story starts in about 1740 with a gentleman called Benjamin Hyatt, who inherited Painswick House from his father, Charles Hyatt. And he was told to come here because it was much cleaner air. He lived in Gloucester. So he built Painswick House and died in rather quick succession. So it wasn't very beneficial for him, but it's certainly beneficial for us. So Benjamin, who was rather recently endowed with a lot of money, together with a chap called Thomas Robbins, created this rather expensive and exuberant landscape that was all about showing off and showing wealth particularly. And originally you would have had this huge sense of excitement from that by crossing from Painswick House across the park at the front and then coming back up through the woodlands and catching glimpses of these rather magical buildings in this kind of strange landscape. And the kind of sensation of travel would have been elongated and it would have been hugely exciting. But for us, the question is, what was here first? That landscape, or the snowdrops which Painswick has become undoubtedly very famous for? And I tend to think the garden came first, because this would have all been farmland before, and the snowdrops wouldn't have been able to proliferate in the way that they have done. The snowdrops are quite interesting, because their name comes from Greek, gala being milk, and anthus being flower. So Carl Linnaeus, who named them, came from milk flower. And interestingly, they're a very unusual modified plant.
So they're joining us.
Because they don't have any petals at all. What we consider to be the petal, the white, is a modified sepal, and this is best explained by the four green sections on a flower that open and then you get true petals ordinarily. On a snowdrop, it's actually the white is the modified sepal, always an arrangement of 6, and then there are lots of variations after that. But the natural kind of distribution of snowdrops doesn't include England, because snowdrop was naturalised by the Romans here. So ordinarily, if you were taking them by their own natural distribution, it would be France through to Turkey, and then Russia to Azerbaijan, which I always get terribly nervous of saying. It's quite a tongue twister. There is also a Middle Eastern snowdrop, which I recently learned about, and I think this is fascinating because its distribution is from Syria through the Golan Heights to the Lebanon, and then down Israel. And that also flowers at this time of year, which is quite interesting. It looks very similar but much smaller. Our snowdrops, we have one of the largest naturalistic collections of Galanthus nivalis, and that's behind us in the woodland. And then we also have an incredibly large collection of Galanthus ankensii, which is over there, both of which from this vantage point we don't get to see. So I kind of tempt you, and then you go off and find them for yourself. Those Galanthus nivalis, interestingly, we have never divided to propagate, so the sheer size tells us they must have been there a good couple of 100 years. And historically, in the Victorian period, the garden was open to local residents of Painswick to come and pick snowdrops here. Of course, we don't allow that now because being a garden that's being restored, we rather rely on the income from visitors coming to look at them to help pay for the ongoing restoration. But I say it's a couple of 100 years because the way a snowdrop distributes its seed is fascinating and explains the length of time from seed to flower, which is roughly 7 years. And how it occurs is that the snowdrop drops its seed in its immediate vicinity, and on each seed, we can't see it because it's very small, there's a little fleshy tail, and this tail of kind of fleshy tissue is incredibly attractive to ants. There's lots of substances in it they like to eat. There isn't much to eat at this time of year, so they gather these seed, take them off to wherever they've made their ants' nest, which is generally in very fine, tilthy soil, and once they've eaten that flesh, the seed's then left, and that seed then germinates, and this is how they spread. So when you consider how long that must take and how many there are, you can say that it's been a couple of 100 years. Now, our kind of great claim, or at least in my mind, our great claim is Galanthus ankensii. This is it's a larger snowdrop, at least 20 centimetres tall, with a big hanging flower, and it has been awarded an award of garden merit by the RHS. And we say that it was, if not discovered here, this is certainly its kind of ancestral home, because in the middle Victorian period there was a man here called John Atkins who lived on one of the estate cottages and was quite interested in snowdrops, and he had a snowdrop bulb sent to him, which was the kind of thing that happened in that day, and this bulb became into his possession, and when it started flowering he knew he had something quite special and different. Now he must have increased its volume of bulbs he had, because by 1975, that would be impossible, by 1875 there were enough of them to go into commercial production, and he named it Galanthus imperiatus, which it most certainly wasn't, because the name is misapplied. So it's always caused lots of confusion as to what this Galanthus is, but into the 1900s it was named in his honour as Galanthus atkensii, and this is the one that grows here. It's especially attractive, so this is its spiritual home, we like to think. We have got other collections of snowdrops in smaller quantities, and you can see them particularly there along the bank, which are out now, is Galanthus atkensii James Backhouse, which is a variation of atkensii, and it has two additional sepals which are twisted on the back of the flower, which is really quite attractive. And then all along the vantage point there are collections of different, more unusual ones, such as SR Knot Magnet, which again has a very big flower like atkensii, and a rather beautiful Lady Elphinstone, which is the double yellow. So there's plenty to look at. I hope that I've kind of given you at least a snippet or an overview of what there is here, and you'll go off and enjoy it. If you want to ask me any questions, feel free. I know it's very chilly, so I'm kind of winding up quite quickly.
Very good.